What's up, guys? We out here. You're listening to Short and Sweet, a Donut Princess podcast, where I bring on some pretty interesting people that I feel like you will get a value out of, whether that's their personal story, their journey, their career, whatever it may be. And I've had such a pleasure of bringing on some really amazing guests. This guest in particular, Daveth, is someone who actually helped me really kind of get back into my identity and my roots through his Khmer classes. So welcome to the studio.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you so much for coming. And, you know, for those of you out there who don't know, tell us a little bit about you, just like in a few short sentences.
Yeah, my name is Daveth. I just recently moved to California about a year and a half ago. And I met Mei Lee because Mei Lee signed up for some of my Khmer classes. And yeah, we just been following each other on social media.
Yeah.
And, you know, just like recognize your hustle. And like you recognize my hustle. So
Yes.
Thank you so much for bringing me on your podcast.
Yeah, and it's like pretty cool with the pandemic happening. You connect with people from literally anywhere. I feel like before the pandemic, it was mostly in real life, like meeting people, friends of friends, but I'm really glad I got to meet you when you started teaching your Khmer classes.
Yeah, it's kind of wild because I kind of started doing it on a whim.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I planned it out for like a while, but like you know, like that initial step when you're like, okay, I'm going to like do this, but I feel like no matter how much you plan it out, when you actually start like doing the process, it's never like the same. you always kind of like have to like pivot, and yeah, it's wild because from starting the classes, I get to meet like folks like you.
Mm-hmm.
And folks honestly just like all over the US and actually like all over the globe. Like I have
Yeah.
people like taking classes from like England, from
Germany.
Like yeah, you had a classmate from Germany.
That was the wild part, is like we had our classes, I think it was like 4 p.m, but you see this like young girl, she's in Germany, and it's like really late over
It was
there.
2 a.m.
Yeah,
for her. And
she
it was like, honey, like you are really committed to this class.
Yeah.
But I think I from teaching the class, I just feel like I really feel like there's like a sense of like wanting like to know more, like this like very strong like curiosity from like folks, and that is just like something that I really like love.
Yeah,
from teaching.
and to add on to that curiosity part, I think that when you are, you know, living in America or anywhere really, and you are somehow of the Khmer descent, whether that's your parents lived there for many years or that they, you know, were in the Khmer Rouge and came over to America, whatever the journey is, there's always this curiosity about our past and our culture. And I can definitely successfully say that through your class, I learned even more than just the characters. It was like you shared some amazing like movies where, you know, it had the translation to help us learn, or you were telling like folklore stories or just like little rhymes, which I really, really appreciated. Like if I were to go up to my mom or my dad and ask them about these things, they probably wouldn't know, or it would be hard for them to recall. But it was something about how you presented it in a way that made it so relatable and also fun and visual is what I really enjoyed about your class.
Thank you so much for saying that, because the way that I kind of like plan like the class is to kind of cater to the inner child that is inside like all of us, you know, because like I feel like as like adult now, like living like navigating the adult world, you know what I mean, like you work like so hard like that, like sometimes you forget like about like the little kid like in there that like really like want to know like these things that are just kind of like separate from, you know, like the hustle. You just you know, like what a story of like my culture, like what are like like why stories that kind of like explain things in like the culture, you know, like
Yes.
mythology and stuff like that. So I am very intentional in like putting those kind of information into like the class.
Yeah, and like even adding on to that, the Khmer mythology, let's say, Khmer has like there's like monsters and spirits and folklore, and there's this other dimensional world that I feel like a lot of us are born and raised with these superstitions, but you know, we never have read about it in a history book. So it was really great to like, you know, experience that in your class. Could you share like a folklore that it was like one of your favorites?
Not like a folklore that, I mean, I have so many like folklore and story that like I love, but something that I want to share like that I've learned recently from like a Khmer anthropologist, that Ang Julian. He has this like series and like these books about just kind of like the supernatural world like in Khmer, and just kind of like how like it's called like Arupai,
Okay.
which is like, you know, kind of about like the spirit and stuff like thing like neta like he's talk about like thing like dai dam or what you know, like the spirit of like the house and stuff like that. But from like listening to like his lecture and his like talking about it, the way that just kind of like the supernatural like world like exists like in like Khmer culture, it is kind of like a reflection of like the real world, you know, like we kind of like Khmer people, people that live like adjacent to like Khmer people in that area would like create these like, you know, like being to kind of like reflect or like answer about like, you know, like things that are happening in like the real world. And I think that's like super like interesting, you know, because it's a side of like culture that like that part of like the culture like exists in like our culture, right? And I don't know, like in like America, you know, like what is like American culture, like,
Right.
you know what I mean?
It's a blend of everything.
Yeah, it's a blend of like everything. So like, you know, like when you like, for example, like in America, like I would hear a story about like the Sandman, which is now like a Netflix like like series talk like explaining about like, you know, sleeping and like dreaming and stuff like that. But those kind of like supernatural like mythology like mystical being, they also like exist in like in Khmer culture.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to like to know about it, because it's kind of give you like a different like dimension, you know. Yeah.
And it's hard to like kind of explain to your non-Khmer friends. I think Chinese people understand it because there's a little bit of overlap, but like, yeah, like app, like I remember vividly because this is how I learn about my culture. I'm in Cambodia and we're going, you know, in the car, we're going to different places, and I'll just Google it. I'll just Google things and jump around from different articles. So I learned about app from when I was in Battambang with my dad, and it's a scary, scary being. But I just think it's interesting because I didn't grow up knowing that character. But going to Cambodia when I'm a little older and I'm like, you know, Googling and researching, I'm like, oh, people really believe in this. Could you explain Aap for us?
Yeah, actually, Aap is a figure that Ang Julian like talk about in his series also, and Aap is this like this being, this like woman who. Yeah, it's like kind of like, you know, like I guess like in
like the Grudge.
Yes, sort of, or like in
Grudge.
I guess like in American culture you can call it like the Grudge, or like a witch or whatever. But up like at night, this being is able to kind of like pull like their head, and like then separate the head and the neck from like the body, and take out like the whole entire like intestine, and just like fly around. And in Bandit Anjali in like a lecture, he talks about how like, but like the thing is, it's very like that is something that is kind of like a commentary on the birding process from like back in the day, because app usually would feed on like the blood of a woman when she was like giving birth, like feed on like the placenta and stuff like that. And it's like that belief is like very specific to, you know, specific region of like Cambodia, because like people in like the city, like in Phnom Penh, like no one like really like believe in that, right? But if you go to like certain part of like, the countryside and stuff like that, you see like you know, like village women giving birth, and usually, you know, the house in like the village would be like wood, right? And it's kind of like on like these still, and underneath like the house during the birding process, what people would do is like they would put like thorny like bushes underneath like where, you know, like the blood from like the birding process would collect, because the belief is that if the aap like come to try to eat like the blood, they would, the intestine and stuff would be like caught on like the thorn, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like very specific belief, like that is specific to group of people that living in Cambodia, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, so that is like the belief for about like app.
Yeah, I think app reminded me of like somewhat between a Grudge or Exorcist character, and again like the way that it's described with like the hanging limbs and like the bloodiness thing. I think it's very interesting to explore that. Not only, you know, we learn about it in Greek mythology, but like, you know, in Khmer mythology, it's really, really cool to see that. A little bit terrifying, but also really cool to see that.
And like, you know, like I said, like how, you know, like these like being like exist to kind of like to kind of explain or live adjacent to like the real world. Like this figure kind of like came about to kind of like explain, like, you know, like the very specific custom, you know, of like a woman like giving birth. Therefore there could be like, you know, some like negative spirit or something that will like try to like interrupt like the process by like eating like the blood or something, you know. So people like, you know, like put like thorn like underneath like the house and stuff like that. And then, you know, obviously like the like people would like take like the figure, make it into like movie, write story about it, you know. But the way that like these like figure like came about, it's to explain like some very specific like real world like event. In this case, it's the birding process.
Yeah, I think it's super cool. And earlier, before we started talking about app, you were mentioning about your inner child. So let's talk about your inner child. What does your inner child do and play, and where do you see that coming in your adult life?
Yeah, I was born in Cambodia, and I moved to the US when I was 10, and I feel like my inner child is basically what I kind of like remember of like Cambodia. And for me, my inner child like love like stories. When I was in Cambodia, I literally would like skip school just to go to, you know, like the street vendor and like buy like, you know, snacks and like the book vendor, and would just like buy a book and like read it, and yeah, like my inner child is like very curious, like love stories, and my inner child also like hate the very like strict like teacher at school, the kind that you know, like
they would hit you, right?
They would hit. I was hit. Like in Cambodia, I still like remember like if the class was like being like too disruptive or whatever, the teacher would be like, okay, the whole class would be like punished, and like everyone would take out their prinkla, like
what is that?
The bomb, you know, like the one with like the monkey holding the coconut. Like, I would me and my friend would like put it on my hand, hand like before like getting ready, because the teacher would come around and like hit like your palm. So like for me, like that makes school not as like enjoyable. So that's why like I think when I was like little, I would like skip school sometimes, even though I know I was gonna get punished for it. And I think that the opposite of that kind of show up in my class, because you've been in my class, and my class is like super like
so chill.
Yeah, it's so chill. Like it's all about, you know, just very trauma informed, all about like making sure that like people in the space feel taken care of, feel safe and feel loved, because I think it's so important to create that type of atmosphere in order to allow people curiosity to
there's this like
flow.
other kind of trust.
And
I feel like, you know, old school methods of like a teacher coming to hit you, that doesn't really create trust. It creates like you're the enemy and we're the students. And I never felt that way when you had your class. I think one thing that was super impressive was just how seriously you took inclusion, and really like getting the kids to, not kids, but you know, adults, but
the inner child,
the inner children in your class, to really like, hey, like, you know, these icebreakers are really, really needed. And you brought up topics too. I think there was like something important happening in the world. You're like, I just want to do a mental check. Like, how's everybody doing? And even that shows like how much you care, but also this space of inclusion of like, hey, we want to talk about it. We're here together. Let's do this together. And I really enjoyed that part.
Thank you so much for noticing that, and that also just came from like my own personal, you know, feeling of like I identify as like a queer non-binary. I use he/they pronoun, and I just like feel like in at least like in, you know, like my own family and stuff like that, there's still not a lot of like inclusivity.
Oh no.
You know, even like the language surrounding you know, like LGBTQ, language around like mental health and stuff like that, like those kind of language, like I feel like even like adult like within like our community like don't know or like don't have access, or sometimes like they think of it like different like than we do, right? So like the thing like for me, because I identify with like those things that are kind of like on like the marginalized of the community, I want to create like a space where like when people show up to my class and they identify like with like those identity, I want to make sure that like, hey, like you're not just like someone that's on the sideline. This table is like for you. Like I want you to feel main character energy in this space.
Thank you for sharing all of that too. And I think you bring up something really important that I want to discuss about identity, and especially Cambodian identity. How do you say it again? Daveth. Because for me, I'm a visual, so for me it's Daveth. Daveth.
It's okay. Like it's not. It's
Professor.
My name is actually spelled incorrectly when I moved to the U.S.
That happens a lot.
Because the uncle at the embassy didn't know how to spell David in English. And so he spelled it with like a TH at the end. But you know, when I became a U.S. citizen, they were like, do you want to change the spelling of your name to like, you know,
like David?
I was like, no, like I just like, no shade to all the other David, but like I think it's kind of basic. So I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna keep like the spelling of my name, because it's unique. And I feel like it's kind of like, it's like it adds on to like the immigrant like stories, because like you hear in like our community about how like you know, like people would have like incorrect birthday. Like
All
some
the time.
people like don't know like their own birthday when
Yeah.
when they come to like the US.
Yeah, my dad made his up. when he
Yeah,
came here.
exactly. So I'm just like, you know what? This is my immigrant story. This is part of the
Yeah.
process.
Hey, I'm so glad that you ended up keeping it. Like, it's similar to my name, right? May Lee, Mayly. Nobody has ever spelled it that way. And it's because my immigrant parents didn't go to school and they guesstimated, okay, that's how you spell it, but I'm keeping it, you know? And people are like, Mayly, that's such a cool name. I'm like, thanks. Like, and there's meaning to it too,
Yeah.
right? So I'm really glad you kept that as your immigrant
Yeah,
contribution.
you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
it's kind of like add-ons to like our identity. It was just like, yeah, like my parents didn't know how to spell like
Yeah.
this way, so they did it this way.
Exactly.
And like now what?
Exactly. But before the break, we were diving into a little bit about Khmer identity and, you know, this lack of terminology for terms that really celebrate the LGBTQ community. And I want to talk specifically to you about your identity. And, you know, at what point, you know, did you realize and see that there was like a lack of that word? Like, was it really hard to tell your parents what was going on, like, you know, like what you identify with? And like, walk us through that, because I know that because there's such a lack of it in our language, and this could be Chinese language, Khmer language, Thai language, whatever. What I want to do is, again, create the space where, hey, this is like how you do identify and talk about it, and we can make that a normal thing. So go ahead.
Yeah, I like knew that I was queer very like early on in my life, and there's always like this one word like in Khmer like "tơi."
Okay.
And like even like saying that word like now as an adult, it feels just like squirmish because
like a negative connotation to it.
yeah, because like you know like growing up like in Cambodia and even in like the US like people don't use like the word "ktoy" in a positive
Right.
like light, you know,
It's like a
always,
label. Like
yeah,
it's like a
like something is wrong with you.
Yeah, like
you
it's
know?
not a normal thing, so you're
Yeah.
that. I understand.
Yeah, so so then like you know like it kind of create like this like distance with that identity and myself, right? In on like a Khmer level, and when like even when I came out to my parents, like I didn't say "mẹ bà nhom ktoy" or whatever.
Right.
I literally just had to like show them a picture of like me with like my boyfriend. I was like,
You're like, this
I
is
couldn't
him.
say it. Like I can't say it because it's just like because like you know like imagine like growing up for like 20 something years of your life and you associate like that word with just like kind of like being like the worst thing that could like happen to you as like a kid when it comes to like family dynamic and stuff like that. You don't want to say it. It's uncomfortable.
Right.
And so but I mean like now that you know like I've been out for years and you know I actually had like conversation with my parents and stuff like that. It got like easier, you know, but it took a lot of work. And but I mean like now it's becoming like more normalized, you know, like you see the different organization in Cambodia, in like the US that you know like using like more like inclusive like progressive like term like transgender, like non-binary, like queer and stuff like that. And people are trying to like figure out, okay, like how do we translate this from English to something like in Khmer, right? Because it's not that queer people and non-binary people or trans people in Cambodia doesn't exist. They do.
They do.
But we just don't give them the space to like exist.
Right.
So therefore, like the terminology or like the name for it like doesn't like really like exist for it, right? And that's why I think like language is like so powerful.
Yes.
Because language literally like dictates your existence. Like if a word or like a terminology does not exist to kind of like reflect like exactly who you are, you're going to feel like invisible. You're going to cling on to like something that is not like really you.
Absolutely. And it just makes you feel like you never really belong. And that is very disheartening, and especially because we live in the 21st century right now with all the progressions we have in, jobs, technology, the world. It's like, let's circle back and go to the roots of language and create like a term where people feel comfortable with it and there's not that negative connotation. If you were to be the person who could choose like the words or the description, like what would you call for like pronouns or for queer binary, like how would you describe it? Like what would be your word?
I don't know if there's like one specific word that can like encompass like all of like those things, but a couple of weeks ago, I worked with the queer Khmer community in Long Beach, and they sent me like a bunch of like terminology that they want to start like using in the organization.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I went online and I looked up, like LGBTQ organization in Cambodia, and like now those would exist. Like those
cool.
would
Good.
now those would exist, and we compile like a list of them, and like it might not be like perfect, like it might not translate like all like the way, because like translation there's always like like kind of like loss in translation from like one language to like another, but the fact that there is like effort to like do that, I think it's like it's beautiful.
I think that is extremely beautiful, and small baby steps in the right direction, and I'm glad that's being developed too. So let's go back to inner child. 10 years old, just came to America. Like, could you describe to me like your first experiences of American culture or like America? Like when you like your first memory of like, oh, I'm like in America now, versus like that life you described in Cambodia where you're like ditching school and like going to read some books under there.
Yeah, I feel like my first like impression of America, I was like really so that kind of like model minority like myth, I think the first story that I read in the fourth grade at Shoemaker Elementary School in Lynn, Massachusetts. The first story that I read was my first American friend, and it was like this like story about like a young like Chinese like little girl immigrant who came to the U.S. and befriended a white girl, blonde hair, blue eye, and like just like very like lightly like touch upon like story like MLK, like I Have a Dream, Marianne Anderson, the first black woman to sing in front of the Lincoln Memorial. So like all of like those things, and it really kind of like sold me that like America is like this like very like perfect place, like that like when you're here you kind of like get to if you like do all like these things, like you eventually get a house with white picket fence,
Yeah. What a dream.
What a dream. I had a dream once. But I think I also like dealt with like a lot of like adversity, you know, having to
Yes.
learn like
Learn a
like
new language.
a new language, like adapting to kind of like a new like social culture and
Yeah.
stuff like that. um but yeah, like that was kind of like my first like impression. And I don't know, I'm still trying to figure out the American dream. I think we all are.
Oh my gosh, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I can just imagine like a younger like David like reading this book, getting excited, and I think even when you're a small kid, I think from the ages of like before high school for sure, you know, you might like go into it and being like, I'm a kid too, but then like as you get older you realize there are things that kind of set you apart from either it's like how you look, the color of your skin, your eyes, whatever, and it's the other kids that point out to you that, oh, you're not all just kids, like you're a different kid, like you're a darker kid or you're an immigrant kid. Did you ever run into any of that, like with like bullying or just like, you know, feeling like an other person when you were younger?
I think the first time that like I like noticed that like my family was not like the other family like at school was when I was in the fifth grade, and we were going and the whole entire fifth grade class were going on like week long like camping field trip called Nature Classroom. And like I think like we had to pay like $250 for like the whole week or something. And I remember bringing like the permission slip back like home, and my dad like marked like, no, I will not be like attending it, because like we just could not afford $250 like to
Right.
send me to this like camp at the time. So I was the only kid in school and from like the fifth grade that, you know, like
Couldn't go.
couldn't go. But like some of like the other parents like at school, I think they got together and like pooled like some money in. And so my dad only had to pay like $50 for me to go, so I was actually like able like to
Good.
go.
Yeah.
But I think that was the first time when I noticed like, oh, like
Yeah.
I really like came to the US with nothing.
Yeah.
And so that was like one time. And like I grew up in Lynn, Massachusetts, which is like a very like diverse like community. The street language is like, it's the ghetto, it's literally, it's like the ghetto of like Boston, Massachusetts. And the elementary school and like the middle school that I went to had ESL program. So there's like, you know, kids, like we had kids from everywhere.
Everywhere.
And like those are the people that, you know, were in like my friend group. And like I thank God for like that experience, because I feel like I didn't feel like so like alone, because I'm just like, oh, like this kid from like other places of the world that are basically going through the same thing that like I was going through. And like ever since, like I think before I came to the US, I was a very like shy and like timid kid. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like I never like really like speak back or whatever.
We're
know?
trained. We're trained.
Yeah,
to
we're
be
trained
that
to
way.
be that way.
We're trained
But
to be quiet.
but when I came to the US, and like I did experience bullying, especially like in middle school.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like one day I was just like, I don't want to be bullied anymore.
Yeah.
And I started fighting back. And
Like physically.
physically.
Yeah.
And so
You're like, I'm not taking this anymore.
yeah. So like starting in middle school, there was this one incident when we were on this like public bus like coming home from school. And this one kid on the bus was, like saying some very like terrible like things like to me, and then he said something about my mom, which that's
you draw the line there,
that's
man.
like the threshold.
Yeah, you cannot talk about our moms.
Yeah, so exactly. I'm just like, my mom brought me here.
Yeah. You don't know what this woman has gone through.
And so like I fought back, and I was kicked off of the bus. And in that moment, all of the other like ESL kids that were like in my class, like got off the bus with me, and like we all like walk home together because we were kind of like living, in like the same like neighborhood, and like
that. They got your back.
Yes, ESL kid.
I mean, even as kids, you can see the importance of sticking together.
Yeah.
Especially when you're, new to this country, and of course we are, the smaller minority. So even in a diverse, environment, it's apparent like that. And I'm sorry you went through all of that. I think we all went through a little bit of bullying, and kids are mean.
Yes.
Kids are really, really mean. Even like my little sister last year, she got into like a physical thing because the little white boy was calling her a chink and making fun of her eyes.
Yeah.
And she was tired of it, so they fought it out.
Good for her.
Yeah, and I couldn't even be mad at her about that. I was like, all I said was there was another way to handle that situation, because what happens is like then the school punishes you. It's like, what do you get out of it? You get some extra punishment. It's like, that you can talk about it next time, right? And then it happened again.
Yeah.
She told her teacher, and then she's like, well, now they're calling me a tattletale. I'm like, well, would you rather have told the teacher and seen some actual action, or would you have like gone to another fight and then like possibly just got kicked out of school? Like there's impacts to your actions, even though I'm on her side and I understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the fact is like assimilation into American culture is different for everybody. But I know that, I always have a very compassionate heart, and I always ask, because sometimes you don't really go back and explore that. You have this like weird guard, and it could be also fed from our parents, who they are very fear-based, especially from the Khmer culture. Were your parents in the Khmer Rouge as well, or were they after that?
My both of my parents like
they survived.
Yes.
Yeah, and so growing up, even with like the stories of what our parents went through, I feel like that for us gives us a standing point of like, okay, and everything else is not that bad, but it also has us respect our parents based on their experience as well. No matter how old we are, of course, we can be rebellious kids and talk back, but like you said, like me too, like I was taught to be very quiet, respectful, greet people how they're supposed to be greeted, and listen. Like that's like the hard thing that they taught us as kids. But when you go out into this culture of school, there's no rules of that in the school. You have to learn how to kind of break out of your shell and like do all of that. And so, how did you break out of being shy? Because, now you're very expressive, not only through your teaching, but also through dancing. So at what point did you really like get out of your shell and start kind of like, being Daveth, like Daveth coming out into like the world?
I think there was this one time when my mom and we went to the mall, and my mom, her English like to this day is not as good as mine.
Yeah.
And like back then, she like didn't like know as much, and she asked me, she was like, ask her what like the price of like this thing is. Mm-hmm. And as like a kid, you're so shy. You don't want to like you're like, oh my god, like what if I go and but in like that moment I was just like, damn, like my mom really need me in this moment. She really like needs me. And so I went and I did it, and I don't know, like and I think like for me, I think like growing up, even though I kind of like hide my queer self like at home, like I wasn't like hiding it like at school. Like I have always had like amazing friends.
Yeah.
From like middle school, elementary school, that I'm still friend with like to this day,
Mm-hmm.
who have always been like very like supportive, like of me.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I never had to like hide like who like I am like with them. So
Yeah.
that like made it like easier, and like I
Mm-hmm.
feel like growing up, the one thing that like really like scared me the most was that like I kind of don't care what the rest of the world like think of me,
Mm-hmm.
because like I have friends that
I
like
love
love me for like who
you.
I am.
Yeah.
Like the one thing that like really like was like stressful for me was the day that I would have to like tell my parents like the truth about who I am,
Yeah.
and that they were going to like reject me.
Mm-hmm.
And when I like finally like found the courage to like tell like my parents, that didn't happen. They were like like terrified, and like didn't want me to like be like queer.
Mm-hmm.
They were like crying and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. But like to me, I just like feel like this like deep like compassion like for them like
Mm-hmm.
instead, because I like my friend once said to me that like I knew that I was queer like
When you
very
were
early on.
younger.
I had so many years of my life where I was processing this information, and I know all of like these information in like my head,
Mm-hmm.
right? But like for my mom, she gave birth to me and she raised me, and she had this one perception of me for
Yeah.
those 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went to her and we're like, hey, I'm not this, I'm that.
Yeah.
Like I can't just like expect her to just like rewire everything and get it like immediately,
Mm-hmm.
because love takes time.
It
Love
does.
like takes time. It takes like patience, it takes like effort. And like because like I recognize all of those things, like I just like choose to like tell myself that it's not going to be like always easy with like my parents, but like I want to keep like showing up,
Yeah.
and they also like keep showing up for me.
Yeah,
So
that is such like a mature way to perceive and receive that kind of information back. And I'm so glad that you can like be free and like you found that courage to talk to them about it, because a lot of people don't. And
yeah.
it's like but the impact is like your self-expression is just so blocked, and you have to be like two different people.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, for especially for other like queer Khmer kids that are out there that are like struggling with
Mhm.
that, I'm just like, hang in there. Like
Mhm.
you will be able to like figure it out like one day. It might
Yeah.
not look like what you want it to look like,
Right.
but it's going to look like something. It's going to
Yeah.
be something.
Yeah, and I think our parents too, like I think what your perspective that you shared is amazing, because you're right. It's like, what are you going to tell them this news and they're going to be like, "Okay, cool, like let's go eat." Like no, it's they have to go back and process everything too, and for you to hold that space for them is very very bold of you. And I highly encourage, if you're Khmer and queer and trying to figure out the whole thing, reach out to resources. Like there's a movement happening now in Cambodia and in the world where, there's places for you to belong, and you don't
Yeah.
have to like be hiding the whole time.
Yeah, and I think it's also like the lack of access for them. Also, I think
Yeah.
like for folks in our generation, we have access to like language, we have access to like culture, like the world that we live in. Like we go out into the real world. Like you turn on like television, like now like there's TV series, like movies, like literature about like being queer. It's become so like normalized, right? But for my parents, they're not going to like watch like these like queers like TV shows on like on Netflix and stuff. You know,
Yeah.
it's a language issue. It's a like
Generation
generational issue.
issue.
You know what I mean? So it's just like it's kind of like you're living on like these like two like different world, and you're trying to meet on like this like one pathway, and it's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you were able to navigate that, and hopefully that inspires people to navigate their own paths too. We're going to do a quick short break, but when we come back, we're going to go to my favorite part, which are golden nuggets. Daveth is going to share some golden nuggets about how you can get involved in Khmer culture, and we'll be right back with that. Do you want to use the restroom? Or?
No, I'm good.
Okay,
yeah.
good. Do you want to drink some water?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I just ordered a huge Yeti, like the 64-ounce one. So I'm gonna drink like my goal is 140 ounces every day.
I saw Gabrielle Union doing this interview, and she was like, "Oh, like my skin like looks like so good because I drink a gallon of water a day." I'm just like, I'm gonna drink a gallon.
Yes.
A day.
No. After a week, my skin's glowing, and like people are like, "Whoa, your skin looks really nice." I'm like, "Thanks."
I know. I'd be like seeing you like working out and stuff like that. I'm just like, damn, I need to get on her level.
I did a 6 a.m. this morning. If you want to get referred to like the program we do, it's like a semi-personal training, and I feel a lot stronger. Yeah. Like they teach you how to work out right. You know, when you get in the gym, you're like so like, what do I do? How do I do this?
I used to do CrossFit for like so many years, and like I also have like a double major in exercise science. So like I love like working out. Like I love like movement. But you know, I'm figuring out like my work situation.
Yeah, you just gotta figure it out.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. And we're back. And so Daveth has shared some amazing parts of his childhood, Khmer identity, queer identity, how to explore that. And so we're going to get into my favorite part, the golden nuggets. So again, one thing that really impressed me about you is just like, you know, all the knowledge you have about Khmer culture. So if you were to give 5 pieces of advice to someone who wants to learn more but doesn't know where to start or how to even make it cool. And when I say make it cool, I mean, I believe that there should be a world where we can talk about our culture and our traditions and our beliefs and feel like it's cool. Like I personally, I think culture is super cool. When I ask a friend how they do things at their house, I'm like, that is amazing. That's so cool. But you know, I want people out there who they might not feel that way. They might feel like, oh, nobody knows where Cambodia is or is interested in the culture, or I have like all I really know about Khmer culture is the food. But it's like, what pieces of advice would you give for people who are looking to really express themselves that way?
I mean, my like the thing that I love is like language. So I like for me I always tell folks like start with language because there's so many like beautiful thing about like the Khmer language.
Yes.
So like one thing that I want to like share with folks is this Khmer proverb. It goes ta ta ping bum pong, and ta ta is basically the sound of the water drop.
Dripping.
Yeah, dripping. So ta ta and ping bum pong, it means that, you know, the container is full. So basically it's translated to drop by drop the container is like full. And I just like think it's a beautiful like proverb, and I always like see it when I was, you know, in the 1st and 2nd grade, like in school on like the side of the classroom. Because like for me, like it evokes this imagery of Khmer people from like back in the day and like to this day, when Khmer folks would climb up to the top of the palm tree and like cut like the fruit and then like tie the container there, and they came back down, and then at the end of the day they like climb back up to collect like the container, and it would be like full of like palm juice. And like one of like the memories that I love about like Cambodia is these folks that walk around with like these like bamboo canister and just selling these like palm juice, right? And that proverb of like "tak tak pin bampong," it really like, I think it really shows like the patient like virtue of like Khmer people, that like to get to like something that you want to do, you have to be patient for it. You have to like collect it like drop by drop. Yeah, like when you're like in the class, right? I always like tell folks that like start with these like consonant and like vowel, just like focus on like those things. If you're like if you think about like like how expansive everything is, you're going to be lost in the sauce. But if you're just like focusing on these, just like what is in front of you, drop by drop, you're going to get there. Language is it. Language is it. It's like I said, language is really powerful. It's a tool that you can use to like express yourself. You can kind of like attach yourself to, and
well, language is extremely powerful. I also do a little bit of teaching on my TikTok. I teach people Chichao, which is a native dialect of Chinese, and it's always just trying to figure out like how can I make it fun and exciting and share. But I feel like even people who watch it, they just see how enthusiastic you feel about it and how important language is for culture and moving on. So I'm glad that I got to experience your class and listen to all your wealth of knowledge. What are you up to now, and how can people find you?
Currently I am taking a break from teaching, but if folks are interested in taking classes, they can go to khmeridentity.com and add your email to the subscribing list. I won't spam you because I only send out email.
He doesn't spam. I know he doesn't spam at all.
I only send out email for class offering. So that if you are interested in taking like private class and stuff like that, you can go to the same website, khmeridentity.com, and send me an email there. Follow my group Instagram at khmer.identity on Instagram. That's where you can see like posts on like art and like culture. And my personal Instagram is at DDCHETH. You can follow me there for video on languages, on like dance and stuff like that. I
love it. And please use Daveth as like a resource for if you're interested about language, but also about certain things in the culture. Connect with him. He's super cool, and I believe he's a big community leader here in LA and actually globally. Like being that person to take the time and create the course and walk these students through language. This is something they're going to take home forever. They're going to have this. They're going to get to talk to people. They're going to get to read signs. I have to do a little bit of homework on my end to learn the alphabet still, but it's a very, very exciting class, and you get to also network with other people trying to reach back to their identity, and it's never too late to do so. So check out Khmer Identity. I haven't followed that one. That's a new one. And for anything else, thank you so much for listening to my podcast. I hope you got something out of it. And until the next time, I'll let you go.